This is the Between. The Mask of the Tiger is what I'm calling the campaign now. It has been named, I think, because there's a particular ferocity with this group, which I think is worth highlighting and memorializing. Also, we've just had references to the Mask of the Tiger in the game. And it has, if you're watching the video, it's been over a month, like a month and a half since we've played this campaign. And so we're going to be doing a little bit of recapping, a little bit more detailed recapping than I would normally do. And also there might be some like minor inconsistencies between part 5 and part 6, just because we've had so much time between them. That's okay. Also, we don't have mags. Mags may show up in the middle. I don't know, find out. But in any case, let's talk about where we are at. Last episode was quite packed out. You have currently 3 active threats and a 4th one that has to be introduced because of the vessel playbook. And so the Coven ignores the restriction on 3 active threats and introduces it and becomes a 4th active threat, as if you all don't have enough to deal with already. Taking a look at our threats, we have the Limehouse Lurker. The Limehouse Lurker is just waiting to be resolved. You know that the Limehouse Lurker is a child, an actual child, that their mother was a sort of associate of Julius the vampire. And when something happened to the mother, I don't know if we ever defined what that was, Julius essentially adopted the Lurker by changing him into a vampire and then abandoned him. And so that's what's going on with the Limehouse Lurker. You have the opportunity to resolve the threat by recreating a scene of the vampire's home life, then destroying it or making arrangements for it to feed. And so that has to be done in the night phase. You can do it whenever, whichever night phase you wish coming up. The Nutcracker is an active threat. You made lots of progress on the Nutcracker last time. You picked up something like 6 clues or something in one session, which is great. The Nutcracker, to remind you, the sort of big story in London right now are these ballet dancers who are turning up dead, gelded, frozen, and posed throughout the city. And we've gotten really deep into this threat because we've had some conversations with the presumed killer, an individual who calls himself the Sculptor. And in particular, Ms. Sand has kind of put the Sculptor on Mr. Goodfellow's like trail, basically, like kind of trying to like point him at Mr. Goodfellow. This is also a very PvP group, which is interesting. But also we've just spent a lot of time in the dance studio. Just lots of those characters are, I mean, we're all just very, very like really tightly connected into this particular threat, which I think is great. Lots going on there, but you have 7 clues. The questions are all variations on how to resolve the threat, essentially. The Whateley camera. Haven't made too much progress on the Whateley camera yet, and yet the Whateley camera has made itself very well known in the game. This is the one where an actress, Penelope Levy, disappeared after being photographed with the Whateley camera. And Hargrave House is aware of the existence of the Whateley camera historically, because historically the fellow called Whateley studied this camera and believed and proposed that there was a process by which the camera, which he believed was an entity or had an entity in it, would cause someone to be transported away to another dimension, which he called the fragrant void. Now, before he could share his findings with the world, his notes were stolen and the camera was stolen. The camera has ended up, or did end up, with the Society Obscura, a group of eccentric, wealthy photography enthusiasts in London. And the leader of that group, one of the leaders of that group, Portia Abernathy, is a worshiper of Mr. Goodfellow. And she actually brought the camera to Hargrave House to gift to Mr. Goodfellow. And that, however, caused the entity in the camera to lash out a bit, because the entity in the camera is very intrigued by Mr. Goodfellow. And we had a very interesting scene where Julius's masterwork, so to speak, was animated by the Whateley camera entity, and Ms. Burnright had to fight it. And then we have the Coven, which we'll introduce at the top of the day phase. I might wait and introduce it whenever Mags is here, because it really does implicate the vessel character, and so I might just hold it. If Mags doesn't show up today, I might just hold it for a session and then introduce it next time. So, but it's out there, and Hargrave House will have to deal with it eventually. So, taking a look at the hunters, you all have 3 conditions, and that is not great. And we off camera, we were all talking about how no one wants to get rid of any of the conditions because they're very cool conditions. Although it sounds like Chaotic has a good plan for Burnright, at least on one of those conditions. So we'll see how that plays out. But in any case, I'll remind you that if you have to take a 4th condition, you have to mark a Janus mask, and every marked Janus mask puts your character closer to retirement. So that is where we are with those things. I'm trying to think if there's any other little loose ends or side things we need to be reminded of. Julius is still out there being Julius. It may or may not come up, but Julius did murder quite a lot of people in Hargrave House, and that may—
So did we.
Yeah, that may come back and haunt you all at some point. Burnright was implicated in that. Ms. Sand murdered a dancer. I mean, this is the Mask of the Tiger. You all are worse. You all are the dangers of London. It is not the irony is deep, okay? It's your remit is to hunt less dangerous things in London than you. Okay, so any other things we need to be reminded of, though, or anything that I forgot or you have questions about?
The only thing I can think of is Burnright made a friend with a ghost a while back, and
was this the remind me which ghost this was?
This was a ghost of a little girl associated with the Limehouse school.
At school, at the Limehouse school, the workhouse. Yeah. Okay.
And I was like, oh yeah, you can come back to Hargrave House.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And I'm thinking of trying to lure the lurker to Hargrave House using the ghost. Just sort of supernatural children.
That's pretty good. Well, they might have known each other too, right? Because
yeah.
We kind of intimated that the lurker was connected to the Limehouse school, so that's good. Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting angle, and I'm glad to be reminded of that. Thank you. Any other reminders or questions?
I think I might be wrong. We saw that the lurker's mother was one of Julius's ghouls, and she died while they were feeding off her.
Right. That's right. Yeah, and we don't actually know too much about the quote unquote home life of the lurker, but I think what Chaotic proposed makes a lot of sense. So yeah. I think that'll probably work pretty well. Okay, great. Well, I'll remind you for the day phase that you can do one of several things. You can do frame up intimate scenes where one of you is doing your vice in order to get some conditions cleared. I recommend it. You can continue your investigation of any of the threats. Note, you could be doing that during the vulnerable move by choosing the clue bonus whenever you do that move. And or you can try to focus on a dawn question, or you can combine any 3 of them in one scene if you're very clever. There are lots of different things you can do. It's really up to you. The day phase belongs to you. And so with all that said, Mr. Goodfellow, what do you want to do today?
It's still Christmas time, correct?
It is, yeah. And in fact, we think that there's going to be some big Christmas Eve thing with the Nutcracker, right? With the Sculptor, and in particular, a performance of the Nutcracker at the ballet.
Well, I think I want to pull a prank and perform the vulnerable move thus. So I think I gotta find out where Burnright's up to.
Oh. Yes, Burnright, I think, is, as most days, spends his time at Hargrave House, keeping things nice and tidy. I think you would notice that outside of his usual dress, the tiger mask, originally it was in his pocket, but over time, it's becoming more and more prevalent, and it's sort of instead of like you have like a pocket watch tied to a chain and like kept in your pocket, for Burnright, the tiger mask is attached to a chain and kept in his pocket.
Nice.
So
Yeah,
then
I
what's
think
the
I-
scene?
Well, I ask Burnright, Burnright, what do you think is the greatest evil currently plaguing our society?
As an
Hargrave House.
That is an interesting question. It depends on what you considered evil. For the most part, like any sort of evils that just aren't. I would say those who are out of control. That's the greatest evil.
Ah, yes, out of control. I know one such man. Now, tell me, Burnright, my answer to that question would be the exploitation of the working man by the bourgeoisie. And I have heard of a terrible man who must be shown the error of his ways. A factory owner who works his people ragged, who shows them no mercy even on this most holy of seasons. A man named Ebenezer Scrooge.
Oh, there's a couple ways that this could go. Sasha, are you saying that I forget the name of the book, but like
Christmas Carol?
the Christmas Carol. Are you saying that's not a thing?
I don't think it's
I'm
written
sick.
yet, isn't it?
Oh.
I don't think
I
it
don't- I don't-
exists yet. Pretty sure it doesn't.
The
Hold
time
on.
period
let me
was nebulous.
Yeah.
It's not past 1870 though. Hold on. Christmas Carol was written. I mean, it doesn't matter because this could be the story that inspired it, right? Oh no, it was in 1843. So yeah, so we have to
Okay, so perfect timing.
So we either have to agree that the book does not exist, or that the book exists and this is the actual Ebenezer Scrooge. So
yeah,
it was a work of nonfiction.
I mean, Robin Goodfellow is a real fictional character in this context.
Yeah, I know it totally works in the context of our story. I'm into it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to declare that it has not been written yet.
Okay.
And this may inspire someone. Who knows? It's fine.
Yeah, I think Robin's gist is let's pull a prank on Mr. Scrooge by staging a haunting on Christmas Eve. If only by like, I think you have to move that like summon ghosts in certain like locations, or we just take one of the haunted things in Hargrave House and leave it under his bed.
I do have something that could cause haunting. Yes. Yes, that I do have something.
Maybe the plan is like I knock on his front door, distract him while you break in and do what you do.
I like it. It's good. I'm trying to like. I don't think I like to. I'm going to keep this strictly invulnerable move. I don't feel the need to like make any major stakes going on here as far that would require a day move. And so, why don't we just fast forward to that scene with the initial with Mr. Goodfellow knocking on the door of Mr. Scrooge. Presumably, a servant will answer, but that might be enough to keep the household distracted. Let's say a sort of like plump housekeeper answers the door of Mr. Goodfellow.
Hello, is Mr. Scrooge in at the moment? I have a proposition for him.
Mr. Scrooge is currently upstairs going over the accounts. That's his favorite activity.
Oh, I'm sure, but if you could interrupt him for about a moment, I have a business proposal I'm sure would greatly expand his coffers.
Please come in and have a seat here. I will go and see if he's receiving visitors. And of course. She bids you to sit down in the hall. And a few moments later, this older gentleman comes down and he says, what is this? My housekeeper tells me about some sort of business opportunity.
Oh, yes, yes. That was a lie. I'm here collecting alms for the poor.
And his teeth set, clenched tight like someone else we know. And he says, so you're wasting my time, is what you're saying. The poor wouldn't be poor if it wasn't for some sort of fundamental flaw in their moral system, some particular lack of virtue. Why should we encourage that sort of thing?
Well, certainly it's the responsibility of a great man to ensure the benefit of all of society.
He laughs and says, he goes, indeed, indeed. I always give a goose or two to the workhouses at Christmas. Isn't that enough?
1 or 2 gooses for entire workhouses, Mr. Scrooge. Oh, what magnanimity you bestow upon your people.
I did not plan on coming down here to be insulted in my own entryway.
Mr. Scrooge, you find in this world, this universe, that what goes around comes around.
That feels like a good cut to Mr. Burnright. So, or Burnright, what's going on?
Oh, well, Goodfellow is going around to the front. I'm going around back. First floor is easier to like break into in terms of like opening a window and climbing in through. Burnright has a crowbar and several implements for breaking in. This is not the first time that he has done this. We don't know why he's done this multiple times, but it's a thing. And he has a bag with him, and he goes like he's like slinging around corners. He hears Scrooge come down the stairs, and like he hurries sort of like quickly up it while Scrooge is being distracted by Goodfellow. And under the bed, he starts to lay out clothes of a dead man. Oh, you're not gonna like this one, Scrooge, are you? Roger doesn't like me, and I don't think he will be very pleased about being called back here.
I love it. Good. I don't know. That feels like I feel like the vulnerable move is sufficiently triggered here. What conditions might be cleared?
I think I want to clear marked by Madame Gagnon, because maybe like rumors of this flit through society and she kind of like rethinks her interest in the guy accused of like begging Scrooge for money.
Oh, that's interesting. I admit, I don't know if we even have to take it that far. It could honestly just be like, it could be something more ephemeral than that. Yeah, it could honestly just be like because you have like a connection to the Snow Queen too, right? Like it could just be like a general sort of like Madame Gagnon might still be interested in you, but not enough to the point where it becomes a problem, right? Yeah, I'm pretty well feeling that. Yeah, that's interesting. Go ahead and clear it. We'll see how it shakes out in the role play.
Got it.
But we'll clear it for now. And what do you think, Burnright?
This is gonna sound a little bit weird, but perhaps the Sons of Another World, because I'm delving into sort of the world of the paranormal rather than extraterrestrial. So
yeah, I like it. Yeah, take it. I think it's good. Yeah.
Because I definitely don't think that either Mask of the Tiger or Worshipper gets removed because of this, because it's still a very, well, it's still very nefarious thing that Burnright's doing. So
Yeah, no, I'm into it. Good. Okay, great. So I just got a message from Mags. Mags will be here in a little bit. So let's just talk about the bonus while we're waiting on Mags. Mr. Goodfellow, you get to either invite Burnright to ask you a question about the past, or you can find a clue while you're at Ebenezer Scrooge's.
Yeah, I think I'll invite Burnright to ask me a question if I passed. I think maybe like I get kicked out of Ebenezer's house. I meet up with Burnright, and we're just kind of, well, Robin at least is skipping along, kind of self-satisfied with this.
Mr. Goodfellow, the deed has been done.
Excellent, excellent, Burnright.
Oh, you did it. Oh, Scrooge is not gonna like that one. That one is, he doesn't, that particular ghost doesn't like me for a variety of reasons. But are you haunted by anything, Goodfellow? Do you have any ghosts or skeletons in your closet?
Oh, I'm haunted by the same thing everyone is, Burnright. The past and the weight of it.
All right then. So what would we do after that? You still have a fair amount of day phase left here, I think. It's probably still late in the morning or early in the afternoon. Any thoughts, Bernard?
Personally, I what I want to do, I cannot do at this point.
Interesting. What did you have in mind?
It's both a mechanical thing and a literal thing because, well, one, Mags isn't here, and
Okay.
two, I can't request a vulnerable scene with Mags because
Ms. Sun has to do it. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, why don't we? Well, I think Mags will be here shortly, so we can kind of resolve that then. Mr. Goodfellow, anything you'd like to do?
I guess I will maybe visit the Society Obscura.
Sounds good. Let's just have that scene. You have the free run of the place because of Portia. And so when you arrive, Periwinkle does answer the door. Periwinkle is probably very changed because of his experience with Miss Sand a number of nights ago. And I think he's dressed all in black. He's dressed all in black, and he actually has, he's wearing like a black suit that would be suitable for a young man, but he's wearing a woman's mourning veil over his face when he answers the door. And he says, "Ah, Mr. Goodfellow, did you wish to see Mr. and Mrs. Abernathy?"
My dear Periwinkle, who went and died on us?
I fear it was my innocence that died.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate. I'll go see the Abernathys now.
He lets you in. And yeah, he'll go get the Abernathys. You have a moment though while you're downstairs waiting on them. Anything you want to do in that interim?
Are there any photo shoots at the moment?
Yeah, you can probably hear some activity going on in one of the rooms here. Let's take a look. Yeah, I think there's a photo shoot going on in the American West room right now.
I'll go upon it and kind of peek in and see how it's going.
When you go inside, the American West Room features several vignettes meant to evoke a sort of like Old West or a Brit's thoughts of what the Old West, American West looks like. And in fact, one of the scenes, indeed, one of the scenes being photographed right now, is like a sort of like a kind of cowboy funeral, right? Like with a bunch of people dressed in black in a graveyard, and there's a big, kind of like wooden coffin, and that's probably why Periwinkle was dressed the way he was dressed. That's what you see. And also, we have to paint the scene here, so let's go ahead and do it. Everyone, this room is not quite right, but feels off about it.
I think maybe the American flag is like missing some stars.
Interesting.
As you step in the room, there is a floorboard that creaks ever so slightly, as though it's been removed a couple different times, but never been put back quite right.
I'm going to cut over to Burnright for a moment. Burnright, you've made it pretty clear that you intend to lure the lurker to Hargrave House tonight. What preparations are you making to get the ghost like ready, or to get the ghost on scene?
In terms of getting the ghost on scene, since I did use a ritual to call it forth and to like ask it things, and that's sort of thing. I used frog's wax before, even though like I've marked it, I think I still have a little bit of that frog's wax left. So, and currently the ritual room is not available because I removed the door to it. I don't know where the door went. I cannot say where it, that's not within Burnright's capability. But I sort of like, but in like, I imagine the ritual room is in the underground, of like near the basement, what have you. So I'm like outside of it, drawing in with wax like various symbols that I've seen Miss Sand do before. Whether or not these things will work is debatable, but I know they will do something.
I like it. Good. Okay, so Max is here. I'm going to go ahead and pause the videos to catch Max up, and then we'll continue. Okay, so Max is pretty well caught up, and I do want to now take a moment, since we do have Ms. Sand, to go ahead and introduce our fourth threat of the campaign, or fourth active threat, I should say, which is the Coven, which we saw a little bit briefly. Remind me, I didn't see this part of the video. Was this, we saw them on scene. Basically, they were on a boat and they caused the captain's tongue to fall out, right?
Yeah.
That's right. So the Coven is a special threat that is only introduced when the vessel chooses to do so. And here we are. The Coven has arrived in London. They are here in the guise of a group of fortune tellers and mediums calling itself the Fellowship of Dreamers. But Ms. Sand, you know the truth. They are very evil, very powerful, and very dangerous. Ms. Sand, you know the only reason the Coven would be in London is if they were close to finishing their grand ritual. What will this grand ritual do when complete, and why must Hargrave House put a stop to it?
The leader of the Coven has no natural talent for seeing beyond the veil. And it is something that she has resented for her entire life. And so what she has set about to do is to thin the veil such that everyone can see beyond the veil, which, aside from the obvious disasters, will also mean that there are no secrets about those who have passed, which will cause quite a lot of complication for, well, all of us, as well as, you know, the Queen and everyone else. So
A certain ballet dancer might have something to
Yeah.
say about you specifically. Yeah, interesting. Good.
just to name one.
Just one aspect of what's happening here. Yeah, good. Now, you don't know where the coven is, but you know where they've been. They have been to the homes of several prominent members of society, where they were guests before performing seances and tarot card readings at the homeowners' fates. You have 3 addresses of where the coven, calling itself the Fellowship of Dreamers, where they were sort of residents briefly before moving on to the next place. Those addresses are 14 Brompton Road, 6 Boscobel Place, and the Rutland Gardens Estate. These are very ritzy addresses, and you can find out like who lives there with just very little inquiry. You don't have to like roll any dice or anything. So if you want to go to either of those places, any of those places, just let me know. But those are your leads. The question and opportunity. The question is this: when and where will the final step of the grand ritual take place? It is a complexity 6, and it allows you to resolve the threat by stopping the ritual and or destroying the coven. There is a special rule while this threat is active, which implicates everyone, which is the coven is capable of attacking anyone in London remotely via powerful hexes they cast as a group. While the coven is an active threat, I have a new keeper reaction called Hexcraft. I can use soft or hard versions of this reaction to essentially attack you all remotely with the coven. So know that, especially if the coven thinks you're on their trail. But just Ms. San's mere presence in Hargrave House makes you a target. So understand that. There's no particular aspect of the Janus mask here, and you have 6 night phases before the grand ritual is complete. So that is the coven. I'll transfer all that information to the threat sheet on our first break. The very last thing that was happening was Burnright was making preparations to use the ghost of the girl from the Limehouse school to lure the lurker to Hargrave House to deal with the lurker. And Mr. Goodfellow had gone to the Society Obscura, where, by the way, Periwinkle, mourning the loss of his innocence, is dressed all in black, including a veil, and invited Mr. Goodfellow in. Mr. Goodfellow noticed in the American West room that they're actually doing a sort of like tombstone, old West, old-timey funeral photograph shoot, which is probably why Periwinkle was actually dressed like that. But Periwinkle likes to be dramatic, and so he claims his innocence. He's mourning his innocence after his encounter with you all. And so that's sort of where things are at. I was going to say, Ms. Sand, that because you put the Sculptor on Mr. Goodfellow's trail, I'm going to let you clear, marked by the Sculptor. It doesn't mean the Sculptor's done with you necessarily, but I think his focus is changing, especially also because Madame Gagnon has had an interest in Mr. Goodfellow too. I think there's all sorts of reasons why his attentions might be shifting. I'm not going to add the condition to you, Mr. Goodfellow, but just, you know, it's a thing.
Roger.
And you have a condition called Julius's Gift. Remind me what that was.
I actually don't remember when it queued in. So Julius and I, between the mockery of Robin's sculpture that Julius put in my ritual room, and then I think later also Julius, well, before Julius and I ate a ballet dancer together. So I think Julius, I had piqued Julius's interest when we ate the ballet dancer, and then Julius put the gift in my ritual room. which was
Oh, the
this
gift was the
mockery
sculpture. That's
of
right.
the
That's right.
sculpture.
And the sculpture's dealt with though. So I think you can clear that as well.
Okay.
So you don't necessarily need to do any vulnerable moves to be in decent shape today. You're certainly welcome to. But in any case, what would you like to do today, Miss Sound? Ms. Sand, do you have any thoughts on what you want to do for the day phase?
I think the last estate, which I currently forget, but I think I will want to inquire about the Coven's seances in London, just as a preliminary measure to get started on that. But,
yeah, that sounds good. That would be the Rutland Gardens estate, which is the home of a couple called the Blanchards, and the hostess of the party that they were at, and her name is Timothea Blanchard. Sorry, that should be Blanchard. Yeah, you can go there, certainly. Let's just start with that. I think a footman will answer the door and he will say, yes, can I help you?
Hello. I am here because you recently were hosted a seance from one of my friends, and they were concerned about the follow-up. So I just want to make sure everything is okay, and the information that you received from Beyond the Veil has not caused too much upset.
The footman's eyebrow is arched and he says, please come inside and wait here. He shows you to a little space to wait, little side room. He says, I shall get Mrs. Blanchard. And Mrs. Blanchard comes. She has very pursed lips, a very too tight corset, and a bead of sweat rolling down her forehead, you'll notice. A question about Rutland Gardens. Rutland Gardens is a large home on a cul-de-sac. Interestingly, the footmen and all the servants are in a very, very traditional style. They all have like powdered wigs, and the whole place smells of juniper. And as I paint the scene, everyone, Mrs. Blanchard is excessively formal with guests. What about this experience confirms this?
I think she has like a very well-appointed sitting room, and like she always makes sure to wait like 15 minutes before arriving, just to make sure they have a chance to, really take in the momentousness of the occasion. It's a power move.
I think there is an obvious place for calling cards, and there's, the footman kind of nods at it in a reference to this is not the correct protocol. Like, the fact that I am getting an audience is only
you just showed up, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
In terms of what else is in the area, there is sort of like the footman offered to like take any coats and what have you, and there is a slot for everything, such as a place for jackets, a place for gloves, a place for hats. Everything is very neat and tidy.
Good. Mrs. Blanchard, she says, hello, I'm Timothea Blanchard, and you are? Oh, you're muted, Max.
Hello, Timothy. I am Helena's son.
Mrs. Blanchard will do.
Mrs. Blanchard. Yes. Hello. Well, you may call me Miss Sand then.
Well, Miss Sand, I gather from Dudley that you are here about that rather distasteful event that took place here recently.
Yes, I understand that my fellow mediums caused quite a stir.
You get a very, very conspicuous eye roll when you say my fellow mediums.
And so, may I ask why you find it so distasteful?
Well, if you must know, I only did it because it was a dare. It was a waste of a perfectly good evening, if you ask me. I would have much preferred a round of euchre or whist, or perhaps a spirited game of statues or something. That's always a delight. Instead, the night was given over to chanting and candles and waving one's hands about. It was patently absurd. And I gather you are here because, well, Dudley mentioned someone from the other side might have slipped through.
Absolutely. I'm also.
Are you here for money? If you just need money, if this is some sort of shakedown, you'll need to come back when my husband is here.
I actually do not care for your money. I appreciate that you offer such. No, I am here because I am concerned for the well-being of you and everyone here. See, obviously, you are practically minded, but many times it has happened either that some being slips through from the other side and haunts the place for a while, or what often happens is that once people make contact with those beyond, they are quite upset the next day and have follow-up questions. And so I want to make sure that you and yours are okay.
I like it. Take the information move with sensitivity because of the nature of the conversation. We'll get dice on the table and cut back over to Mr. Goodfellow.
Pretty sure that's a 14.
Nice. We'll come back to that. I have an idea. Mr. Goodfellow, you're in the American West room. What do you do?
I think I want to go and try to see what's in the coffin.
Oh, very interesting indeed. Make the information move with composure, I think.
Roger. That's a 9.
Very good. We'll come back to that. And Burnright, I think I would like the day move.
Day move.
Yeah, I think the day move is fine here. This because it's Burnright.
Yeah.
The day move to get the ghost summoned. It will be with sensitivity. I do think that it feels like it should be at disadvantage. You don't have a particular condition that would make that the case, but it kind of feels like it should be at disadvantage.
So sad.
Just because you are
because
this is not your thing.
This is not my thing.
You're doing it all secondhand. Yeah.
Like Miss Sand has gone out for the day, of course. Like if she was here, it would probably be regular, but since she's not.
Yeah, make it a disadvantage, and let's just see what happens. But first, what are you afraid is going to happen if you fail?
Oh yes. I'm afraid that it's going to attract the attention of other things, because even though you did say like Julian's gift is no longer a problem, it's still on the other side of the wall.
Yeah. Well, and also like the Whateley cameras in the house right now.
Yeah,
There's like lots of bad stuff that could happen.
And I've sort of also implied that Brunwright himself has a tendency to get haunted very easily.
Seems to be the case. Go ahead and roll.
That is a 7.
Great. Let's take a 5-minute break. We'll come back and we'll resolve all these.
Mhm.
This aunt, Mrs. Blanchard, is not being very helpful. She's a major skeptic of everything that happened. But there is a commotion from somewhere around back of the house. You can hear the commotion, you can hear the servants, you can hear growling and barking of dogs, and the bead of sweat on Mrs. Blanchard's forehead is joined by a few more. And she says, "You'll have to forgive me. My husband's dogs have been behaving rather strangely lately." And she says, "One moment, please." And she leaves you. What do you do?
I think I follow her.
You can.
Because this is, yeah, exactly the kind of thing that I am interested in.
Yeah. When you go round, and in the back garden, all the dogs are arrayed in a row. There's like 5 of them. And they're facing east. And Dudley, the man who let you in, says, "They won't leave that spot. They just sit there all day looking east. And whenever we do manage to get them away from it, they always turn and they face east." That's your clue. You're owed a mastermind clue as well. And I have some thoughts on that. I need to look at the existing ones though. Oh, this is easy. On your way back, on a little table, you see a pair of sapphire blue opera gloves laying on top of each other, placed on a table. And there's a little note that says, a little like on a bit of stationery that says, "Dudley, Mrs. Brathwaite left these here the other day. Do be sure to get them sent to Brathwaite Hall." But that's your mastermind clue. And we'll come back to this in a moment. You get the mid result, right, Mr. Goodfellow?
Yes.
Let me grab you a clue. Take a look at what exists already before I do that. We have the warm spices and the complex math equation. Okay, let's take a look. You go to peek inside the coffin. It's interesting because the photography is not really, the composition is just to photograph the people standing around the coffin, not necessarily what's in the coffin, right? But the coffin is open, so you can look inside. And there is indeed a very, very strange thing inside. What you see inside the coffin. Let me see how I want to describe this. Hold on. Oh. What you see inside the coffin is, in fact, a body, or at least a mannequin or something. And they're wearing a death shroud. But curiously, a death shroud is in layers. And no one will stop you from removing the layers. There are 4 shrouds layered atop one another: white, silver, gold, and black, in that order. And I think Portia, wearing a black funeral veil herself, she'll come up beside you and she'll say, "We don't know why we did it that way, but we all knew it had to be that way because of a dream. That's how it happens. The camera speaks to us through our dreams. It tells us the instructions. But I fear they leave almost as soon as they are spoken. But I know that this is the way."
What has the camera told you about me?
And she says, "My lord, it speaks of you constantly. It knows from where you come, and it wants to reach that place."
Then why does it keep secrets from me?
Its ways are unknowable. To minds like ours, it is an unfathomable entity.
I will require answers about this question, and you will bring me someone who can answer them.
And I think here's the complication. She says, tonight, my lord, my husband, he is going to attempt to commune with forces on the periphery. Perhaps you could bring the camera and we could journey together.
He has found the way then?
No, I fear not. But he does intend to explore.
Very well. I will be there.
Burnright, you got the mid result also, right? You succeed, but I have to tell you how you'd be vulnerable if you press forward with this. And I think the way you're going to be vulnerable is, I think it's quite simply this. I think that Julius will figure out what you're up to just because he has connection to the undead realms. He will figure out what you're up to, and he will become suddenly really concerned parent.
Oh yeah, I 100% want that to happen.
So that is what's going to happen. But otherwise, just describe how you get the ghost on scene. What does it look like?
As the sort of final symbol is drawn into place, nothing really happens for a moment, and then for another moment, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen, and Burnreich is visibly getting frustrated. And eventually, he reaches into his pocket, puts on the tiger mask, and punches the wall, and like it shakes a little, and we can see like a little bit of blood pour down and like mix with the wax, and suddenly reaching up to grab his other hand is the little ghost girl.
Good. Let's do another little quick round here. Miss Sand, you've seen something very telling. Certainly, this is coven, residual coven stuff, to be sure. What do you do next?
I think I am going to walk back to Hargrave House, and I am going to take a detour through the theater district, because while I am no longer marked by the sculptor, I am still very interested in the sculptor and what he is doing. So I am just going to walk through the theater district and keep my eyes and ears open as I do that.
So
as I-
Covent Garden is where we're
Mhm.
headed. That's where the ballet and the opera are. And I like that. Just do, I think it's the information move, probably with reason, I think.
That seems right. Let's find out. I almost never use it. Okay, that's an 8. So next result.
Yeah, good. Let's take a look at our list. Or the Nutcracker walking the streets of Covent Garden. Oh, I better look at the existing clues as well. We have quite a few here. Oh, interesting. Okay. This is the sort of clue that I think it's the kind of thing that only Ms. Sand would pick up on, I feel like. But you can hear the voice of a castrato coming from somewhere in the opera house, singing a piece from Rigoletto, Cortigiani il Rasa Donata. This is the clue. It'll be on all of you to make sense of it, but Ms. Sand will make a connection that it is relevant. I will type that into the chat or into the thread. And Cortigiani. And a complication. I think I'll just ask you, how does it make you feel to hear this incredibly beautiful singing?
So I think I am still feeling shaken up by the coven's recent appearance. And so as much as I make the connection to this threat, by which I mean the sculptor, I think I feel like everything is like there's a lock that is clicking into place around me. And that this is, like it or not, the fruit of my own behavior. So this is the result of my actions, that this trap has sprung closed.
Oh, interesting. I like that. Let's memorialize this with a condition, and we'll say that the condition is the condition will be I'm reaping what I've sowed, or if you have a better
Okay.
idea. Yeah.
Oh, I was just going to vote for damned, but
I like that. That's good too. Just we'll put it in quotes. You reap what you sow. That'll be the condition. Mr. Goodfellow, anything else you want to do at the Society Obscura before the day phase ends?
Is Cyrus there?
No, he will be there tonight, though.
I guess
Portia
I just
will
want
say
to go.
he's currently engaging in recreational activities in East London.
Oh, well, I can imagine what sort of recreational activities those are.
She says, oh, well, I can't imagine what could be more interesting than the fantastic work we're doing here. But we all have to have our own little private lives from time to time, don't we?
I agree most wholeheartedly. Tell me, may I see the ritual room once more?
Of course. It's more of a vestibule that we must pass through before making the journey.
And was the last set of my pictures developed?
Yes, but my lord, I fear you are not going to be pleased with them. They're not worthy of you.
I would like to see them.
And she says, of course. And she will go and fetch the pictures. And when you see them, how do you feel?
I think we said before the first set there was like a shadow behind me, sort of like with like the stag horns vaguely in that shape. And I think now it's even less defined. Like I look handsome, of course, but there's nothing more to it. And that's what makes Robin kind of go a little bit ballistic. And he just rips them in half in front of her. And he's just like, what is this? What went wrong?
And she collapses at your feet. And the other society members they sort of like let out a cry of like surprise and shock. And she says, I don't know, my lord. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. Please forgive us.
I do not want you begging. I want my picture taken.
And I like that. That feels like a good cut.
Right.
Scar your reflection, though, please.
Aw.
Bernard, anything you want to do before we end the day phase?
Burn rate is burn rate. It's probably not gonna get me anything, but I would like to go to Goodfellas' room.
Okay.
I don't think we've actually been in there before, so I'm not sure what it looks like.
Oh, let's paint the scene about it. I'll come up with, I'm good at on the fly paint scene questions. The room is, I imagine, sort of, because it's Hargrave House and existed before Mr. Goodfellow, it is what it is. But in what ways has Mr. Goodfellow put a vernal or otherwise nature-inspired touch in the room?
I'll take the obvious one. It smells overwhelmingly of musk, like a deer.
Yeah, that's what a side character says, like a deer.
There's also, since Goodfellow has come to this house, it's very clear that this room has been painted over its typical wood paneling into a very, very like shade of green.
In place of a bed, there is a pile of furs.
That's good. I like it. Okay, so what do you do when you're there?
I'm just going around. To the observer, it would appear that I'm tidying up Mr. Goodfellow's room. I'm making sure that his furs are lined out perfectly. If anything has been soiled, I'll take it out to clean, but like I imagine like there is just like some small piece of fabric, and I'm just gonna take that and pocket it.
Very good. Fantastic. It just occurred to me, I don't recall on the Limehouse Lurker what the die roll was for answer a question. Does anyone recall if it was a high or a middle?
It was I think we missed that roll, but then we all spend masks
You all spent
to make
masks to go up.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the middle result then. Okay, good. Okay, fantastic. That just makes the Julius situation more interesting, I think, if you intend to do that tonight. That'll wrap the day phase. Let's go ahead and take a look at the dusk. Okay, playbook moves. We have the Ghost of Hargrave House, and we have day work as well. What do we think about Ghost of Hargrave House, Bernray?
Ghost of Hargrave House.
You can remove a marked item from the hunter's personal quarters and add it to your own unmarked, if you wish.
I am going to give back the Snow Queen's Nutcracker to Goodfellow.
Very good. And anything else? Is that good?
And day work. Wait,
Oh, yeah.
I think
You get an option on day work.
day work. Enter just one. I would like to ask a question about the Nutcracker.
Sure. What is it?
I think I'm presuming that the sculptor was part of the ballet once before.
Yes, we've established that. Yeah.
But was there anyone that he was attached to specifically, like any older members of the ballet?
While doing day work, you will come across a newspaper item from that time that is a bit of salacious gossip about two dancers being perhaps more than professional colleagues. And while you don't know enough about the sculptor to know whether this dancer that's rumored to be in a relationship with another dancer, you don't know that much about the sculptor. And indeed, the article doesn't even name that person. One of the named dancers is one of the dancers, one of the dozen or so dancers that killed themselves back then. And so it makes you wonder if there's a revenge aspect here, perhaps, going on. Or maybe you could infer whatever you wish, but that's what I think. I don't think it's a clue. I think it's just good context for the situation. And let's proceed. Hargrave House. Let's do. For Hargrave House, let's go ahead and do the reception hall. Each of you, do you feel unsettled or at home when you enter Hargrave House? What in the reception hall reinforces that feeling?
I think Robin feels at home because as soon as you enter, he at least can catch just a small whiff of the musk emanating from his bedroom.
Burnright feels at home because he's been at Hargrave House for a while, and everything that when you originally set up for Hargrave House to take in guests and what have you, it still stays the same, even if the hunters may change. Hargrave House always stays the same.
Nice.
Sand feels unsettled because there are layers of wards and sigils in the entryway to the house that are intended to keep dark forces out. And while they do not work entirely against Sand, there is still a distinct feeling when stepping over them that unsettles her.
I love that. I love the idea of Hargrave House having these like this sort of like layers upon layers of like former hunters and former problems, right? I think that's really great. Fabulous. Let's talk about what we're doing during the night phase. I think it's fairly straightforward what you're doing, Burnright. You've made your intentions fairly clear. You are going to attempt to lure the lurker via the ghost. If you have a different idea, let me know, but that's what you've been kind of hinting. Mr. Goodfellow, what are you going to do tonight? You have an invitation.
Yeah, well, as much as I would love to, go vampire hunting, I am marked by the Whateley camera, and I think I'm drawn to the ritual at the Society Obscura with the camera.
One, and indeed, you have to bring the camera because it's in your possession currently. So here it's in Hargrave House's possession. Good. Miss Son, what are you doing tonight?
I don't think I can let a ritual go down in proximity of my ritual room without being present. So I will be babysitting Burnright. And also, if anybody is okay with it, everybody is okay with it. I feel like we could answer a question for the Nutcracker at some point soon.
You should maybe do it now because
Yeah.
so, I mean,
I'm thinking about how the Royal Ballet trains its featured dancers.
Yeah, that's the
Because
one I
we
want to
have-
answer.
I think we're at -1 for that roll at the moment. At least if we have 8 clues, so
if we
straight
use
roll.
all of our clues, it'll be a straight roll. And I think some of it is just like rehearsals at 2 a.m, frostbitten legs wrapped in bandages, or sorry, 3:30 in the morning. They're obviously on an arduous training schedule, and it's very common for ballet dancers to ice their legs when they get done with training. But obviously that is going a little bit too hard. This is nothing new for the ballet. We know this because of the string of suicides 15 years ago. They trained the ballet dancers really, really roughly. And I think as I was walking through Covent Garden and heard that line from Rigoletto, I was thinking about damned courtiers and how everyone who participates seems to be tainted. And so that is by virtue just of being ballet dancers and being beautiful and highly skilled athletes, they are damned.
I
even
love
if the
that.
sculptor doesn't strike them, they
I would like to add a little bit more. The fact that it's castrato, because I Googled this up of like, what does that mean? It actually relates to the threat even more, because that's specifically all the killed people we found so far have been gelded. Like, to be a castrato, you have to be like, you literally have to like deform yourself to become one. So I think this implies that the sculptor has not been castrating the dancers, rather than they.
Oh, this is like some sick shit Madame Gagnon did.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
I'd imagine it's even worse, the training with the Christmas Eve performance coming up.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Okay.
I actually think that might give context with the sculptor has a polar bear.
I'm curious about that. Yeah.
This
What
is
is that
actually
about?
that's the clue that I've been scratching my head over the most. But
and also the sculptor wants their warmth. Those two things feel connected. But anyway, what do you think?
Oh, I was just thinking about the sculptor's actions as trying to save the dancers and trying to save them from pain. And so when we saw the polar bear, it was in this kind of like spectral sense. And I think that's the sculptor's like protective motherly instinct.
That's pretty good.
Dancers.
Yeah, that's right. Because we didn't necessarily see a literal polar bear, right?
Yeah.
That's interesting. I like that a lot. What is the warmth angle then?
I think this just refers as to the motivation of the sculptor, because, well, it's implied that, especially with the contents, that this may be a revenge angle, like he's doing this by himself. Like he's alone, left out in the cold. So
this is very interesting. Yeah, I love it. That's great. So it's almost like a symbolic thing. That's great.
Yeah. He wants to protect the current crop of dancers the way he and his fellows weren't.
Yeah, this is great. This is so twisted and sick. I love it. Because it almost makes the sculptor like sympathetic in a way, except they're doing some really fucked up shit too. Yeah, it's good. Okay. I love all this. So let's review the clues. I mean, yeah, the theory holds up great with the clues. I mean, the idea that essentially Madame Gagnon is kind of the villain here and has been for years, and that in her twisted mind, like, and also one gets the impression that it's like she's trying to achieve this like magnificent artistic expression, much like the sort of like, you know, the castratos would have achieved on the, you know, the opera side of things back in the day. But also it feels like a way for her to control them. Like it almost feels like the emasculation is like part of that, you know, like in a way, like that feels like part of it to me. Like in a there feels like there's a whole lot of story there, but it's not relevant for stopping the sculptor, but it's definitely interesting. I love all that. That's great. Yeah, all the clues hang together really well. Especially given the final performance, like it's almost like the final performance on Christmas Eve is just like the thing that's making all this come to a head, right? Like it's causing the sculptor and Madame Gagnon to like be in this like really heightened state, and they're kind of pushing their plans forward. I like it a lot. I think it's really good. It feels great. It's a flat roll. Whoever wants to make it, I think Mag should make the roll.
That is an 8.
An 8. So per the, you are correct. You now have unlocked the opportunity to resolve the threat by empathizing with the sculptor and promising the sculptor, quote unquote, fresh materials. Although now we can interpret fresh materials a little differently, right? Because now it's kind of like, maybe it's a more of a protective thing, which is interesting. But in any case, you will also unlock the Dance of the Nutcracker move when you do this. The middle result means that it may be, I think the complication is probably going to be Madame Gagnon. It's probably going to be the hard case here. So, well, with all that said, Miss Sandra, are you going to make that, are you going to take the opportunity, or are you going to save that for another night?
I think I'm going to save that for another night because we have the immediate threat that we are trying to resolve.
Yeah, absolutely.
I will ask, since we did get a middling result and we haven't used a lot of masks so far, and I know Goodfellow is running low on his reflection, like, should we all spend a mask to bump it up to a 10?
It's up to you all.
I don't have a problem with that.
I'm happy to.
Yeah.
Mark away. Is there an unmarked? Oh no, you've used the one from the Nutcracker. So. Fabulous. Okay, well, so I think we're all sorted for the night phase then, what everybody's going to be doing. Let's go ahead and take a look at the next step, which is Janice mask prompts. This all happened pretty recently, so if you all want to wait till the dawn, you can. But Mr. Goodfellow, if you want to describe how your sculpture is changing because of your imperiousness with Portia, please do.
I think maybe there's like a vague face like carved into the central chunk, and before was like kind of beatific, you know, have a softness to it, but after this it's like harder, you know, the edges are more angry looking.
Fantastic. And let's do the unseen. I'll introduce it. Tonight's unseen is going to be makes the most sense here. Let's do a drink at the Four Magpies. That is on 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the 5th row on the very far right side. The Four Magpies is a pub popular with working class gay men, run by the butch landlady Polly O'Donnell. While it seems like any other cramped, rowdy, spit and sawdust pub, it is an oasis of relative safety in a dangerous city. Polly does what she can to protect her boys, or quote, her boys. There are a few small rooms available upstairs, and some of the lads make a bit of extra coin entertaining wealthier guests. Paint the scene is for everyone, of course. And prompt 2 will be for Sasha. Prompt 3 will be for Chaotic. And prompt 4 will be for Max. Let us go ahead and take a 5-minute break. We'll come back to the night phase.
Mhm.
The 4 magpies. Everyone, please describe a moment we see of men sharing a moment of intimacy that would be unwise to do elsewhere.
I think the bar is pretty rowdy, but there's a quiet corner where two men are sitting together and one's just asleep, on the guy's like shoulder, like breast, and he like has his arms around him, and just a very quiet, intimate moment.
This pub has 2 floors, and we see like a couple running upstairs, laughing, giggling, holding hands, and like as they reach sort of the top floor, like one like pushes another against the door, and like they sort of fall into a room. Just, it's an enjoyable moment.
I think for people who it might be their first time or who don't have kind of established partnerships in this place, there is a table near the front where a group of men are playing spin the bottle as just kind of a drinking game.
Love it. Bernright, Ms. Sand, I just want preparations at this point. How are you dressed? What preparations are being made in the ritual room? And Ms. Sand, I'm particularly interested in what Bernright did right and wrong when it comes to summoning the ghost, at least, to the space. Think about it for a moment, and whenever you're ready.
So I'm wearing like a simple black shift dress. I am prepared for things to be messy. And I think I go around, and I think Bernright had inscribed quite a number of different sigils. And I think some of them I end up rubbing away because I have sigils both for summoning and beckoning, and sigils for banishing and abolishing, right? And I think Bernright just kind of inscribed whichever ones he remembered. And perhaps the reason it didn't work right the first time is because it was kind of a come here, no, go away message.
I love it. It's good. Bernright, how are your preparations going?
Bernright is dressed in his normal outfit. It doesn't appear that he has like a ton of like variety in dress wear, but he currently has put on the mask of the tiger. So like this is an important situation, and someone needs to be taking the reins of this one. At least Bernright's mind that's him, although in reality it's probably Miss Sand.
Indeed. I want to have that scene between the two of you when we get back, but that's good for now. Mr. Goodfellow, I think when you arrive at the Society Obscura tonight, the energy is different. The energy is different in that you can tell this is not like a celebratory sort of thing. This is more of the society is here to do some kind of work that they don't really even understand. How is it different when you walk in? Like, how do you feel different?
I think, you know, the air just feels very charged. You know, like before a storm comes in, you can just feel it, like your goosebumps all hanging up on your skin. And I think that a lot of people are still in sort of mourning clothes they were wearing for the funeral earlier. In particular, I'm sure Periwinkle still has his veil on.
No, Periwinkle always has to be in a different costume. So we'll talk about Periwinkle in
Okay.
a moment. That's in the
Well,
rules. That's in the
Rob at
draft.
least is wearing black, which is not a color he usually wears.
Fantastic. When Periwinkle opens the door, in fact, he is nearly naked, and his body has been rubbed all over with silver pigment. And he says, "Mr. Goodfellow, I fear you may be overdressed for this occasion."
Periwinkle, I see you've gotten over the loss of your innocence.
Well, yes, I suppose I have. I'm embracing my new role in life, and indeed my new role in the cosmos.
Indeed. Well, life is all about change. And I hand him over the camera and start unbuttoning my shirt.
Very good. Let's go back to the Four Magpies. Sasha, Curtis Jackson is a young barrow boy who has heard rumors of the Four Magpies, but never visited before. How do we see him make his first nervous steps inside? How is he drawn in?
Yeah, imagine, tall fellow and sort of like a cabbie hat drawn low over his eyes, head darted back and forth, trying to make sure no one sees him taking that first hesitant step in. And, I think he freezes on the doorstep, kind of looking around, seeing everyone inside, doing their thing. And he's like, oh shit, this is a bad idea. I don't belong here. When someone maybe at the bar, kind of surrounded by their friends, makes eye contact with him invitingly and kind of gestures for him to come over. And that's when, Curtis really walks in.
Fantastic. Back at the ritual room, I will tell you the scene is the two of you plus the ghost girl. But she's not just walking around in the open. She's in the corner, in a dark corner, and you just see her knees because she's sitting on the ground. Her knees and the hem of her dress. The rest of her is obscured by shadow as she sits and waits for whatever is going to happen. Let's just have the scene between the two of you. Role play.
Should I still call you Burnright while you're wearing the mask?
I am. I'm not sure if there's really anything else you could call me. Could make things confusing, really.
There is the story of Jekyll and Hyde. I just wanted to make sure that you would use the same name.
Burnright takes at his pockets, less of a nervous habit and more or less making sure that he's all dressed appropriate, and he finds one of the cigars is out of place, but then he puts it in its proper placement on his jacket.
Anything else?
So
It's I don't honestly think Mr. Goodfellow would appreciate me just being called anything else but Burnright.
I see. Always thinking of someone else's feelings before your own.
As I said before, it would make things confusing.
It seems that if you're taking after me, and I'll follow your lead here, But perhaps you should learn how to be selfish.
Really?
Have you thought that with this power, you could have the things you want? You don't need to sit around and wait for people to give them to you. Anyway, that's a conversation for another time. Our guest here appears quite nervous. Have you said anything to her since she showed up?
I try to get her comfortable, but something's going to be happening tonight. She's aware of it. I'm not sure if I'm aware of it currently.
You did all of these preparations and you're not sure what you want to happen?
No, more or less of. These sorts of plans are less about clockwork and more or less you can hope to drop a pebble in the pond and see the ripples flow out in their proper patterns, but sometimes there is creatures beneath the surface that can disrupt that.
Just so, however, sometimes that pebble is a little more explosive than you might otherwise have intended too. Anyway, I suppose someone should check in on our guest. Usually I trust you to do that kind of thing, and I'm still wearing my chatelaine thing with all the, and so the curved blade that I have, and cut my thumb in the place where I'm accustomed to. And I step over to the ghost girl and I rub her cheek. And so my hand goes through her, but my thumb, where it is bloody, seems to make contact. And it's meant to be kind of a caress, a consoling gesture.
Rites of Salt and Smoke. I love it. Go ahead and roll. And you get your sensitivity is raised in the ritual room by 1.
So that's an 11.
Very good.
And so
and the effect, I think, is you're trying to I guess it's probably trap the lurker, right? Like,
yes.
Even though it's not really like a trap so much, but it's kind of the same idea.
Yeah.
Good. We'll come back to this. Mr. Goodfellow, you are taken undressed to the very top floor of the Society Obscura, to a single room that you reach through a small set of spiraling stairs. Periwinkle says, "The astral plane room." And you are invited into the astral plane room. The astral plane room is a strange room painted in gray, silver, dreamy purples. Paint the scene, everyone. There are objects arranged all over that seem to be from another world or time. Describe one.
Please,
There-
relative. Oh, sorry, go on.
There is on one of the pedestals is a blue sapphire eye.
I think there's a small potted, like almost like a bonsai tree, except it's made of solid gold. But if you touch it, it feels like wood and leaf. And it doesn't seem to have been painted.
Placed relatively centrally in the room is a globe that traps ever moving smoke. So It swirls and spirals, and most of the smoke is a pale lavender color.
The Society Obscura is all there. They're all in various states of undress. And they have had key points on their body, points of spiritual significance, painted with silver. And at the far end of the room, you see a man wearing a moon mask, sitting on a chair. He is wearing very form-fitting silver and white bodysuit, silver cords wrapped around his arms and legs and neck. And Portia is there wearing her typical kind of like blousey, drapey, willowy sort of like gown, except it's in silver now. And she says, "My lord, thank you for bringing the camera. We don't yet know how to recreate the process, but we hope that with you being here, it will speak to us and tell us once again how to do it."
Yes, well, your husband certainly seems well prepared.
Yes. And you'll notice now that the little dais that he's sitting on has 3 chairs. He's on the one on the right. And Portia says, "The chair in the middle is for you, my lord."
Obviously. And I go take my seat.
But she does not sit in the chair on the left. They're waiting for someone else. Let's go to the 4 magpies. Chaotic, a well-dressed toff enters the pub, clearly cruising for trade, which eager lads compete, good-naturedly or otherwise, for his attention, and who just scoffs at him.
I think that this well-dressed toff, it's very like out of place for the magpies, because the magpies is more middle class, and he is very clearly upper class. And he sits down at the bar, and then you have these 2 younger men come to sit at the other sides of him, trying to like say, "Oh, well, I've got this," and what have you, and try to like get somewhere with him. One of the lads is wearing this nice, very yellow like overcoat, and just like is just like, "Oh, look, well, I work in sort of all this sort of commercial trade. I deal in opium. I deal with this and that." Whereas the one in sort of like a gray overcoat is like, "Well, I deal with like trade in like fabrics and that sort of thing." And they're just going back and forth about who has the more optimal goods. And everyone else in the bar is just like, "Wow, you're dealing with that right now? Come on now. It's leave work at home, not here." So it's just the 3 of them in this sort of conversation.
Limehouse Lurker shows up. He is eventually standing in the doorway of the ritual room, the open doorway because the door's been removed. And he's the boy, same size as, or same age and parent age as the ghost girl. Very pale. And then right behind him is Julius, who puts his hands on the boy's shoulder and says, "I don't particularly appreciate you trying to speak to my son without me being here.
Well, Julius, from what I've seen of you, you seem to be busy as of late.
Yes, but not too busy to look after my precious child.
Oh. Yes, really?
I meant to
Bodies-
ask, what did you think of my little tableau I left here a few nights ago?
I found it quite charming, actually.
Yes, I did it in part for you, my dear. I was disappointed when you weren't here.
I'm sorry, I do occasionally have other engagements at night. So, but we are here to talk about your son, as it were. I must say, I think you have been rather lax in making arrangements for him to feed.
Well, you know, you can't coddle them. That's what I've learned. You have to let them find their way in the world sometimes. I mean, no one was, no one taught me to do what I do. No one cared which centurion or other I fed on.
To be fair, Julius, you are also older than your child when you were turned.
Yes, I suppose that's true. So then, what are you proposing? Is this going to be a joint custody situation?
Well,
Will I be responsible for him on the weekends?
Julius, I don't think you quite understand the situation at hand.
I mean, what does it matter? So he feeds on a person every now and then, and bodies begin to stack up. Certainly Hargrave House shouldn't have any objection, or...
It's less about the amount and more or less that they're being left out on the street. Julius, you have to even admit that's not a very good idea.
No, I suppose it's not.
Unless you have someone else to blame for it. Come on now.
Yes, well.
I have no wish to hurt the boy. And you're right, I have no particular objection to the occasional body. However, there is a place and time, and if you will not teach the boy some manners, someone will have to.
And Julius says, well. And while this conversation is going on, the lurker and the ghost girl are just playing in the corner, just hanging out. We'll just cut from there for now.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Goodfellow, you're all just sort of waiting around for this third person. Portia keeps asking you, are you comfortable? Do you need anything? That kind of thing.
Yes. Get on with it. What are we waiting for?
And Cyrus, who I don't think we've established as your worshiper, it's just Portia.
I think so, yeah.
Cyrus turns to you and he says, Mr. Goodfellow, we are talking about matters of time and space. You can't rush these things.
You might have all the time in the world, but I do not. I have skipped out on a very important engagement to be here, and I cannot help as though you're wasting my time, Mr. Abernathy.
And at this point, you hear the doorbell rings. Periwinkle goes down to fetch whoever it is and returns with the man in the sun mask, still dressed in his gold silk dressing gown. And Cyrus says, "In the space between the sun and the moon, that is where we will find the way between. We will find the way to another world. The camera will see us all more clearly now." And the man in the sun mask says nothing. He just takes his place in the other chair with you between them. And Portia kneels before you and says, "My lord, how should we dress you for the occasion? How should we prepare you?"
Bring me gold, bring me myrrh, and bring me the third thing from the Bible.
Do you say that exact thing?
I think like maybe I like wave my hand around trying to remember and was like, yes, bring the third thing from the hymn.
And the man in the sun mask leans over and says, "My dear Mr. Goodfellow,
I'm sorry, have we met?
You may not know who I am, but I certainly know you, and I have met some of your colleagues at Hargrave House.
Indeed.
My dear Mr. Goodfellow, this is not the sort of thing that one should joke about. I know that your natural predisposition is for mirth and playfulness, but that is not the sort of journey we are taking."
Well, no one can tell me what sort of journey we're taking in any sort of specific terms, so please excuse my hesitation.
And Periwinkle has the camera set up, and they're getting ready to take the photograph. Let's go to the Four Magpies for our last little stop. Mags, as last orders are called and people start to file out of the pub, how do we see Polly looking after our customers with words or action where needed?
I think there's some of the obvious ways. There are the people who have been overserved, who she makes sure have water and calls a cab for. But then I think from upstairs, there's kind of a slow trickle down of the working boys. And she gives each of them like a small bowl of soup. And there's kind of this after hours tete-a-tete where all of them are, soup and tea or whiskey, whichever people find more appropriate, as people discuss the evening's clientele. And she makes sure that they're all safe. I think there might be some evidence of a particular John who's no good, and she notes their name and bars them from future entry.
Julius says, "All right then. So you're going to make space for him here in Hargrave House to feed safely and to where he won't cause any disturbance in the city. Is that what I'm led to believe?"
Yes.
Fine. Good. I just have one condition.
All right.
What
What is it?
I want to be allowed to move back in permanently. So I can look after the boy, of course.
I see. So you're tired of the absentee father act.
Well, I just, I believe in that sort of parenting where you just throw them in the deep end and let them learn how to swim on their own. But someone has to make sure that the boy has a proper role model in life, and that if he misbehaves, that somebody will be there to set him straight. I've already got my room picked out, in case you were wondering.
Which room would that be?
He smiles and says, "Do you agree to my terms?"
I have no issue. Unless this is the room you picked out, in which case I may have some issue.
Burnright, I won't even ask you to look after me that often.
And at this point, Burnright pulls out from his pocket that little piece of art, like fabric that he took from Mr. Goodfellow's room. Really? So I still would like to know what room we would be moving into, and I just play around with it. It very clearly smells like deer musk.
Right. He says, I suppose we should have a house meeting about it. And we'll just cut there. The photo is taken, Mr. Goodfellow. And it is nothing like the composition, but instead, it is evidence that you are a god. How so?
I think if before the outlines, the shadow behind me were unclear, in this one, it's very sharply defined, and it's as if you can see the whole of my masterwork cast behind me. And I think maybe like the sun and the moon next to me have taken on a little bit of a different posture. There's almost like a shine emanating from them.
Good. And Portia says, "Is it pleasing to you, my lord?"
Yes, this is excellent progress, Portia. I look forward to taking this journey with all of you.
And Cyrus says, "I feel very strongly that the camera will speak to us soon, that we shall all be taking this journey, the journey that Miss Levy went on." And I think I'm going to give you a clue from this, and I'm going to give you a condition. The condition is, I am a god. And let me find the clue. What would make the most sense here? Oh, I think the clue is quite simply just you, Mr. Goodfellow. You are fundamentally important to getting the camera to do what you want. So that's
excellent.
That wraps the night phase. And let's head over to the dawn. Rewards, we have rewards. Let me go take a photo of the reward section of the Limehouse Lurker. I'll drop this in the chat. You each get to pick one thing. I'll read them off for people watching the video. Jenny Johnston becomes a recurring side character. You get one extra clue on the information move when you seek her counsel about events in East London. The man in the sun mask becomes a recurring side character. You get one extra clue on the information move when you seek his counsel about other worlds. And this is, if these rewards are chosen, everybody in Hargrave House gets the benefit. The vampire becomes a recurring side character if you resolved it by making arrangements for it to safely feed. Additionally, Burnright can add the vampire to the Hargrave House informals move whenever that happens, or a memento from the investigation. What's everyone choosing?
I want the man in the sun mask to be my friend.
Okay, so we'll add the man in the sun mask to the reference sheet here.
I will speak for the vampire then.
Good.
I want a memento. Sasha, give me a thing.
Ooh. Maybe like the little girl ghost leads you back to the Limehouse school and gestures towards a stuffed animal she wants you to take.
Nice, that's good. Let's do Dawn questions. Right. Oh, a capital Q question was answered, so everyone gets credit for that one. A threat was resolved, so everyone gets credit for that one. Let's talk about Echoes in the Night. Burnright?
Yes, I did do an echo because like I knew where you were going with the scene and with the Abernathy's, with like with the guy who was in the yellow coat and the guy in the gray coat on the other side of the toss.
That's very clever. I like it. Yeah, it's good. I didn't pick up on it at the time, but now it makes sense. Good. Very good. Did you subtly express sexual desire for Mr. Goodfellow in the way you dressed or served him?
I did take a piece of fabric from Mr. Goodfellow's room, so I'm not sure if that's way too subtle or if that was.
I don't know if it's quite reaching that level for me. Did you engage in a petty reprisal of someone?
Yes. We pranked Mr. Scrooge.
That's right, yeah. Did you continue to perfect your worship of the undeniable? Mr. Goodfellow, you get to answer that.
Yes.
Very good. Mr. Goodfellow, you get the XP, and if you give a personal quarters item to Mr. Burnright, or to Burnright.
Yeah, I think I want to give them access to my fabulous wardrobe, and I think I maybe take out like a tiger striped coat and just put it around his shoulders. There, that suits you.
I love it. It's good. Fantastic. And let's proceed apace here with Mr. Goodfellow. Did you do an echo in the night?
I think the Curtis kind of hesitating on the boundary between the outside world and the bar kind of mirrors the Society Obscura.
Yeah, I'm totally into that. Yeah. Did you secretly show a vulnerable side to someone?
Does my anger at Portia count?
Oh,
It's kind of on the borderline, but I think
it would if the other society members weren't there.
Okay.
Did you express a clear preference for the beautiful over the mundane?
I don't think so this session.
I would say maybe because you did rip up that photo and because it wasn't good enough.
It wasn't good enough. I'm into
Okay.
that. Yeah, I think it's pretty good.
Sounds good to me.
I think it's in the spirit of it. Ms. Sand, did you experience an echo in the night?
I think I was out of one, which is to say I did not want to describe someone who had been injured by a John. So I intended to go there, the caress on the cheek.
Oh yeah, I'm into it. Yeah, I'm into it. Did you make love to a dark entity because it felt good?
No. But I did come face to face.
You did have face-to-face encounter with a couple of them, actually. Yeah, very good. Fantastic. Okay. Let's proceed on. Playbook moves, Memory is the Servant. You can claim a memento from the night phase if you wish, Burnright.
I think it. I think it's goes a little bit further than this in terms of scenes because Julius is moving into Hargrave House, so I think this would be reasonable that Burnright would get Julius's room key.
Okay, I like it. That's good. Do you keep it?
I think I'm going to keep it.
Okay. And Janus mask. Yeah. First of all, I also want you to scar the reflection from that last scene, Mr. Goodfellow.
Roger.
But let's do the Janus mask and the masterwork as well. Everybody has at least one prompt, I think, who it is owed. So whoever wants to go first, go for it.
I think I got one. Narrate a flashback that shows when you cruelly discarded the artist. And you may recall we established that it was William Shakespeare, who seemingly was inspired / ghost-written for by Goodfellow. So I think maybe we fast forward to him later in his career. He's watching a performance of like The Tempest, one of the last plays he wrote. And just during the epilogue, Prospero's big soliloquy, he's like looking at the front row seats and there's one that's conspicuously empty. And I think he maybe goes to like the pub afterwards and just sees Robin there with a bunch of much younger actor and writers just sort of holding court. He's like, oh, why didn't you come? I needed you there. And Robin's just like, because you're an old, sad hack who was nothing before me and will be nothing without me. And shoos him away.
Fantastic. Thank you. Chance mask.
My mask is narrate a flashback to the event that eventually forced you into servitude. Burnright is running through the streets of London just at night and is screaming his head off as he's being chased by this huge lurking beast. And he eventually sees this building that just stands out amongst the rest of the things that like the lights are on, the door looks like slightly open, and he runs inside and bangs it shut, trying to like grab at things to just keep the door closed. And we see this scene as Burnright takes a moment to just breathe for a moment and looks inside, and there is like a group of people, most of which aren't familiar to the rest of us, who look kind of shocked, like this man just burst into the room. But we do recognize the room. It is Hargrave House.
Fantastic, thank you. Ms. Son, did you have one?
My Janus mask prompt was narrate a flashback to your young adulthood that shows a time when you used your supernatural affinities for selfish purposes. So I think we have Helena kind of alone and motherless at boarding school. And there was an older girl who took Helena under her wing. And Helena started doing her makeup to try and look like that older girl, and just developed quite an obsession. And so at first it was just the dark entities keeping tabs. But the way that Helena learned to magically transport herself is by spending the time like stalking this girl. That there are night after night where Helena is standing outside the window of this girl, and at some point in that night I think Helena gets quite depressed due to the lack of attention that she's been getting. And she just runs like a knife through her hands, kind of thinking about things, and finds herself in the girl's bedroom. And that is the first time that she intentionally used her supernatural abilities.
Fantastic. Mr. Goodfellow, I would like to know how the statues change now that you're a god.
I think maybe somehow it gets bigger, like the trunk expands, but that just increases the weight on the branches that bring them down lower and lower. And it's just like crooked and a little bit decrepit.
Fantastic. And I think that's everything for the Janus mask. And so that is our session. Let's do stars and wishes. I will kick off today and say, overall, I really love that we were able to transition back into the campaign very smoothly and easily. So that makes me really happy, even because we had a little break, and that always kind of, you always wonder if you're gonna be able to get right back into it, and everyone did, so thank you. Specific stars, I really, really love the through line of like fictional characters existing in the real world, which is kind of how Sasha's kind of playing the undeniable, which I love. So obviously with the prank, with Ebenezer Scrooge and just the stuff we've seen about, William Shakespeare and everything. I just kind of love all that. I think it's just an interesting theme and through line for the game, which makes it pretty unique as far as between campaigns I've run. I really enjoyed that scene between Burnright and Ms. Sand in the ritual room. I just loved the kind of intimacy of that scene. I thought it was really, really good. It felt like the right scene to have right before this moment with the Limehouse Lurker. Yeah, and my wish is I'm really excited to see what happens now that 2 vampires have rooms in Hargrave House with you all. One of whom is, at the very least, malevolent, I think is fair to say, but definitely not always a friend and ally. So I think they'll be really fun. And I'll be really curious to see like which room Julius thinks is his. So yeah.
I really loved, and I think it speaks to the degeneracy of our Hargrave House, that resolving that threat wasn't even like hunting a monster or anything. It was just like a friendly negotiation with
exactly.
like divorced dad Julius.
Yeah, I love it because for the same reason, because like this version of Hargrave House is really compromised and malevolent, and I think that's really great. You're right, it was a good thing. Anyway, those are my stars and wishes. So.
I really loved Chaotic incorporating more and more of like the tiger mask, and Burnright getting more aggressive as his relationship with it deepens.
I have a star for that too. And I will say, just remembering things that I thought were great about the campaign before. My one wish is we didn't have any of the like frenemy tension between the undeniable and the sun. And so I am looking forward to that resuming and seeing how it's changed now that Helena is a lot more stressed out by the appearance of the coven.
I'm curious how much of the story from here on out is going to be Mr. Goodfellow, Julius, and Ms. Sand engaged in some sort of like weird lust triangle, and Burnright just sort of trying to like keep the trains running on time in the middle of all that. Like, I'm curious to see how that all goes.
I gotta give a star for how that's going, because you would think that Burnright would be the one to keep things on track, but that may not be the case.
I think Burnright's just as much within like the love triangle of it all.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I'm personal wish. I'm very excited for me marking my moss covered gate and redoing my first two masks because I've been thinking on that, especially with like having to switch employers of like how does
Right.
that
Yeah.
work and like what's the true employer of Burnright really, because they may not be Goodfellow, because it seems more Hargrave House as an entity is really the driving factor of Burnright.
Yeah, I picked up on that too, the way you were kind of some of the things you did, especially in your Janus mask, but even I even kind of feel like just the way like you operate in the house, I got that distinct feeling that like it's really it's the house, right? That I think is like the important connection with Burnright, which I think is really fascinating to continue exploring. So
Yeah, it also like it really also ups the age of Burnright because I don't think I've actually described how old Burnright is.
yeah, it has been a little vague, but I thought that was intentional. So
Mhm.
My wish is more scenes with Julius, because I think we've been like ships passing the night for a couple of sessions
you have
now.
been, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Any other stars or wishes?
Pretty much everything that has been starred has like been like a star. Like I really like that scene with Miss Sans and like the how like vulnerable it is and like how much the Limehouse Lurker doesn't really have a voice, even though it's his threats that's being resolved. Like he's just a kid and he's playing in the corner with the ghost child.
Well, here's my question. Is the vampire referred to in the reward section for that threat the lurker, or is it just Julius at this point?
That's a good point. Yeah, see, that's the thing. And I don't know. I mean, obviously, as it was written, it was meant to be the lurker, but in
Yeah.
our story, it could be either, right? So yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's interesting. It is very interesting. I do think that's an interesting observation about the lurker because the it's interesting for me as having run a number of campaigns of this because a lurker who's actually an older vampire is really different from a young one, right? Like they behave differently, they function differently, they're just a different kind of character, and much more dangerous for one thing. But also in other campaigns, it tends to I tend to find that the lurker eventually becomes the servant of the mastermind. That changes the dynamic quite a lot with that character. And so it's interesting that like we have not yet, Theodora has not yet chosen who is the key component of her plan yet. And so it won't be the lurker and it's not the ghost. And so I think like it's just interesting how like different things in the story can be so different when you play this so many different times. Like it's interesting how different things can be. And I just like that about it. So, and it felt right that this lurker would just be like a kid, who doesn't really know what he's doing, and responds to things in a way a kid would. So yeah. I don't think we even named him ever. So
Nope.
yeah, I don't think I ever have. I think I've always ever just referred to that character as the lurker. So fabulous. Any other stars or wishes? Okay. Oh, yeah.
I want a vulnerable scene with Miss Sand at some point.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pure logistics today, but yeah. Fantastic. Okay, well, thank you all so much. This was very, very fun. I'm glad we're back into it. Mags, we talked about it already before you got on the call, but are you, well, I'll just stop the recording for now. This is housekeeping stuff. If you're watching the video, we hope you enjoyed it.